There's a lot going on in the world right now. And if you're anything like me, you spend a lot of time in your mind trying to desperately try and interpret and process and figure out what's going on in the world, what's going on in, your own life, like for me in my life, and how to sort of bridge the two and make decisions and make choices from simple, small, everyday ones to larger, more life-changing ones. When I'm too much in my mind, I actually start experiencing, like most people, fatigue, exhaustion, crazy thoughts. That's that cartoon character where gets electrocuted and his hair sort of frazzles out like that because there's so much going on in the brain. There are 1,000 practices from all over the world that teach us and help us to reconnect with our bodies. The problem is we often don't do them. And so it is important to understand what our nature is. A lot of times when we have a problem, our mind wants to go and solve this problem, and then we continue like solving it, like we're running on this hamster wheel. And it seems like the more we press, the more we effort, the more we push, the solution will have to come, right? Like I'll get the answer, won't I? That's not actually how we work. Like we in ourselves, the universe, nothing works like that. And so, when you're working really hard and pushing away and a friend or a well-wisher or a family member comes and they're like, you should just take a break, and you look at them very angrily and you want to bite their heads off, that is sort of a moment of truth. Because for the most part, they're probably correct. And this is why. And it's important to understand why. When we are in our minds are brilliant and very capable, but they can only process the information that we have already. Something we've seen, something we've read, something we already know. And so it is beyond the mind's capability to connect to universal chaos, universal change, and with trust, with faith, with belief, with knowing internally and externally, allow for the spirit to intervene and allow for a path to form itself. What I've just described is not what the mind is capable of. The heart, the soul, the spirit, with our wise one, with our bodies, are absolutely capable of this. For the most part, most of us are very trained to solve our problems intellectually. We even try to solve our relationships and personal problems intellectually. And for the most part, that doesn't work. And so the first step here is to realize that our brilliant, beautiful, powerful minds are not the best tool to use in every single life situation, in every single outcome. If you want a solution to a problem that you're trying to solve with your mind and it isn't working, use a different tool. That's really all it is. Most of the time, it is a question of choice. We get stuck in our minds because we are continuing to give fuel to this power source that we think will solve our problem. But we have like 10,000 other power sources, and we are practiced in not using any of them. That's why mindfulness is a practice. That's why yoga, connecting to your body, gratitude meditations, all of this stuff, they are a practice. These practices are important because the ancients knew that the mind is awesome and it has its limits. And then we acknowledge that and we settle down into our hearts. We allow our spirit to take over. We start to listen to our bodies, reconnect to our soul, reconnect and ground into the earth, and allow all of our other tools, all of our other gifts to start showing up, coming into the forefront. So we learn to use them, play with them, practice them, and then learn which areas of life we can use, which one of our 10,000 tools, our 10,000 gifts. That's the practice here. And so one of my simple ways to reconnect to the body, well, there's many, but the first one is choice. Actually choosing this and choosing it every day, sometimes choosing it multiple times in the day. This isn't simply about waking up in the morning, meditating, and then never looking at your, state of being again. There's a lot going on in our day. There's a lot going on in the world. And, sometimes it's a choice every 10 minutes in the day when you're, ending, if you're at work, you're ending a meeting, you're going to the next one. That's the reason we focus on the breath. When you return to the breath, you allow yourself to drop from your mind into the body, into the being. And so after choice, then comes listening. Listening to what is. We are very used to listening to the chatter of our minds. And so one of the tools that was given to me a really long time ago, it's like, imagine a lot of your thoughts are like tiny pebbles and they're just buzzing around with the energy of your thoughts. They're in the mind. And the heart space, like here in the body, it's like a calm, still pool of water, a beautiful lake, a very serene waterscape. And so as you're sitting, as you're breathing, as you slow down your breath, you have each of these thoughts that are these vibrating pebbles in the sky. They each descend slowly and they return to the water. And so one by one, we drop our thoughts into the body, into the heart. And then in the heart space, that is where we listen. We listen to the vibrations of what our thoughts actually are. Are these our true thoughts from today? Is it a show or a podcast I saw yesterday that I'm kind of still thinking about, that I'm just cycling through? Is it relevant to my moment? Is it relevant to my meeting today? Is it relevant to the conversation I'm about to have with my sibling? And this is how we take our thoughts without engaging in them, and we return them to ourselves. We return them to our open, expansive heart. And so here we actually listen. We listen to our truth. We listen to thoughts that are actually big and important, and we're either uncomfortable or we're trying to sort it, or it's an amazing thought and we now want to do something with it. Maybe we want to create something. Maybe we want to build something. Maybe it's a great solution to this problem we've been sorting out for the last 5 weeks. But here is where the depth and the truth of it actually come to light. It allows us to let our hearts come and play. Let our hearts, let our emotional body come and play and be part of our life experience, instead of just trying to sort everything from the mind, being exhausted, experiencing anxiety about the future or grief and trauma about the past. Now we can actually engage with our emotions. And here is where I think before we do anything else, we truly have to be in love with our body, our soul, our spirit. And if you are not at that place, that's perfectly fine. I wasn't for years and years. But it starts with practices of self-love, self-nurturing. It starts with practices of gratitude. And so if you do nothing else, but you're simply thankful that you have a body, you have organs that function, you have the ability to walk, move, see, talk, perceive, eat, digest, eliminate, and then, wake up the next morning and repeat, that is amazing, because there are many people on the planet that, for whatever reason, struggle with that. Ask a person who's constipated. Ask a person who cannot eat many foods because of allergies. So it's this funny thing that we trick ourselves a little bit. We like, the mind likes big, complicated things. Tell me stand on your head, yoga asana, or a convoluted posture. And that will be tell me what that is. Give me a big problem. And then I will feel, good. We want these big, complicated solutions. Our mind loves that because our minds are little problem solvers. But honestly, and I say this from experience, the truth of the matter is that the soul and the spirit, they live in simplicity. Simple, everyday, some seemingly mundane tasks or seemingly mundane practices are the things that ground us, that return us to our bodies, that allow for the soul and the spirit to shine through and sort of override this excessive mental process and our excessive anxiety or depression or our, attachments to grief and traumas of the past. It's in the everyday, moment to moment practices. That's why spirituality focuses so much on breath work, because we just breathe. But conscious breath, breathing into our, like deep into our lungs, deep into our diaphragm, holding our breath for a few seconds, releasing it, seeing what it does to our posture. You know, if you start the day kind of like this and you start taking deep breaths, you can't, it's actually, you'd be forcing yourself to stay in this posture. When you naturally take deep breaths, you will return to yourself. Your posture will release, your muscles will release. You're providing your organs, your system, deeper, bigger blood flow, deeper, bigger, like about, you know, the bringing of oxygen everywhere. That is the power of conscious breath. It gets you out of your head and into your heart. It gets you out of your head and maybe into your gut if that's where you need to be. And that's where so much of our intuition sits. And so in this process, again, we start learning the body. We start listening to the body. Whether you are, and the modality doesn't matter because again, there's so many, right? There's yoga, there's Ayurveda, there's TCM, which is traditional Chinese medicine. There's, you know, astrology and numerology. There's people who study numerology and connect it to different organ systems in the body. How cool is that? You know, whether you're looking at your own family patterns or ancestry, like noticing things you did or that you do that a grandparent or a parent did or a sibling did, regardless of what modality you use, when you start in-breathing, when you start looking at all of these, looking through these different lenses at your own life, at your own body, at your own being, at your health, your wealth, your relationships, so much starts to shift and change, and you actually can't help but getting in the flow of changing and shifting and evolving it, which is why it's a practice, which is why it's day to day, moment to moment, experience to experience. And so in this way, we start to unlearn and relearn our own bodies. And this is a place of immense humility if we allow it, because the mind, you know, likes to think that it knows everything. Because it does know a lot of things, but in an unfolding, ever blossoming, evolving, changing universe in this time of ascension that we find ourselves in, it is not just the mind that will, you know, solve the universe for us. It actually comes from the spirit. It actually comes from even knowing and recognizing what your soul and your spirit is for you. What the soul and the spirit is of something else that you're doing, whether it's animate or inanimate, whether it's a person or a project. This is where we start to become more than we think we are. The mind creates a lot of solutions for us. It certainly can. It also creates a whole lot of problems. Anytime you've had worry or anxiety about a future situation, that is your mind creating a set of parameters that you don't like. That's why you have anxiety to it. It has nothing to do with the present moment. It has nothing to do with your present reality. And so these are some invitations, some ways to reconnect to yourself, reconnect to the earth. If you live with a lot of, you know, self-hate, self-worth problems, and the idea of being in your body or loving yourself is so far out, which is where a lot of people are, that is okay. Connect to the earth. Find a tree in your backyard. Find a plant in your house that you really like. Buy a new plant. And like sit with the roots and connect to something that is organic and of the earth. Sitting with plants is a brilliant way of expanding your perspective because they, you know, their nervous systems are developed very differently than ours. A lot of people find, you know, peace and comfort when they interact with their animals. But to use what we have consciously allows us to get out of the mind, into the heart, into the body, into the feelings, and allows us to have mastery over everything our sense organs give us. And then we start to interpret life differently. And that is when we start to see that we are the creators of our life experience. It starts with reconnecting to the body. It starts with love within, the practice of love within. Love is a vibration. It's actually a very high vibration. Love, joy, compassion, gratitude, all that, they are everyday practices that allow us to reconnect and understand the self, understand other, understand the universe within and around us, and our place in it. but it absolutely starts with reconnection and really listening within, and then walking the path that is and was always ours to walk. Have a great day.